won't be as wide ranging. There won't be, I mean, I'll ask you some stuff. Yours will be a little different because there'll probably be a few harder questions just because of the nature of your job and some of the things that you deal with in your job that are public issues and those types of things.
I didn't know that I wanted to be a lawyer until high school, but I was at Hardaway, and Mrs. Weber at Hardaway High School was the debate coach, and I was on the debate team for maybe all 4 years at Hardaway and really enjoyed it. And that's what made me start thinking about law, is the enjoyment I got from debate, taking one side of a case in one situation, and then 2 hours later you're on the other side. You know, you're affirming one time and you're denying the other, and so I really enjoyed that, and that's what led me to law.
You've been practicing law now for almost 20 years?
Right.
And you came into this office 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago.
Right, as district attorney.
As district attorney.
Right.
You had worked here previously as an assistant DA, right?
Right, for almost 10 years.
What's the difference in being an assistant district attorney and being the boss?
The better question is almost what's similar between being an assistant district attorney and being the boss. I think that certainly being an assistant district attorney prepares you to be district attorney, but the jobs are not all that similar. They're headed in the same direction, but as district attorney, there's a lot of, office manager, managing partner, the personnel aspect, the policies of the office, which way the office is going to head, reorganization of the office. Those are the kinds of things that I do as a district attorney. Whereas as an assistant district attorney, I received cases, I indicted or accused them, went through arraignment and got them ready for trial or guilty plea. So it's a different, we're all working in the same direction, but it's like, what's the difference between being an investigator in the DA's office and an assistant district attorney? Almost. There are more similarities, but not as many as you might think.
This is one of the largest law firms in the city.
Right.
I mean, how many ADAs do you have?
We have 21 ADAs.
There aren't many 21-person law firms in Columbus, are there?
No, there aren't. Some of the things I appreciate now, I knew how important office morale was, because as an assistant DA, I knew that somebody needed to keep me encouraged about what I was doing and understanding the importance of what I was doing. And I try very hard to make sure my assistant DAs, my investigators, my administrative staff, that everybody knows that we're part of a team doing very important work for the citizens and very important work for the community.
What do you know about crime that you didn't know when you were in law school? What do you know? What does DA talk to you about crime?
From when I was in law school?
In the last 20 years, what do you know about crime now that you didn't know?
I know that it happens all the time, that it happens to everybody. It's not people that live in one neighborhood. It's not people that have a certain look or know a certain kind of people, that it happens to everyone. And although it happens all the time, and it is, I mean, if you look at misdemeanors and felonies together, it's all the time, that I don't know that I appreciated in law school the fact that between about midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning is a time when almost nothing good is happening. That you are much more likely to get into trouble yourself or be the victim of some trouble between those type hours, during the late night hours, than you are between noon and 5 o'clock in the evening. And when I was in law school, I'm not sure I really appreciated that.
You see the criminal element every day as part of your job. How do you keep that from jading your perspective?
Well, I have a different perspective. Having done this for 20 years, it's harder for me to remember what it was like when I didn't know what the criminal element was like in Columbus. And so, and I think that there's a time period when, as a prosecutor, you hear about all these crimes and you're working in all these cases and you see the criminal element and the victims, and you're close personal with the victims in Columbus. And for a certain period of time, that really does jade you. And you look at everything differently. And then after more time, I think you put it all in perspective. You say, well, this is my job. My job is to prosecute, as you say, all the felonies in Muskogee County and all the cases in the outlying counties, the 5 counties. We do misdemeanors and felony in the outlying counties. And so I have to put that in perspective and say, although I see a lot of crime, that it's because of my job. Of course I know about the crime in Columbus. I'm supposed to know. I get paid to know about the crime in Columbus.
You talk about your Courtroom Experience. One lawyer in town that tried a case against you and he lost. I think he called you a thespian.
I believe he did.
Was that a compliment or an insult?
A compliment, absolutely. I grew up on the Springer stage. I did my first show when I was 5. And I did children's shows and musicals at the Springer all through until I graduated from Hardaway. I went to Stevens College. I was a musical theater major at Stevens College. I got a BFA in musical theater. When I moved to Denver, I continued to do community productions in Denver, Colorado. And then when I went to law school in Lexington, I even did shows in Lexington, Virginia while I was in law school at Virginia Military Institute, which is in the same town.
Okay.
And at that point it was an all-male school, and so they needed females to come in and handle the girl roles. And so I did shows there. When I moved back as an assistant DA, I kept doing shows at the Springer. It wasn't until my twins were born.
And so you're not doing theater right now?
No, my last show was in 2002 when I was pregnant with the twins.
I have a question about that. Being with that thespian experience or background, are you more comfortable when you're up in front of a courtroom? Are there nerves, or can you use your experience that you've had on the stage out there in court?
I think I absolutely do. I think that theater has taught me a lot of things. For one thing, as far as, when you're in a show and you're developing a role, you're really trying to find what in you is true to the character as well. And so it's not like you're up there pretending.
Yeah.
You're finding the truth in the role. And so I feel like, that helps me to find the truth in a case and present it. But the things I've learned about diction, about being able to project my voice, nerves, being able to control your nerves when you're speaking to people, all of those have really served me well.
Is a trial live theater?
In the sense that you are having to communicate. Theater is essentially communicating a story to an audience. You are making sure that through your words and your actions you are telling the story to the audience. And the same thing is true in a trial. Of course, the most glaring difference is that a trial is true and theater is not. But I'm still trying to tell the story of what happened. Story in the sense of the narrative is a better word. Story makes it sound like perhaps a lie. But in the trials, you're trying to tell the narrative of what happened in this incident and communicate that to either the judge in a bench trial or the jury. And so it's the same thing. You're still communicating a narrative to an audience. So in that aspect, it is very similar.
Talk about the time you spent away from this office, the buffer between. I know you were in practice with Marshall Nutt, Charles Day, and that firm. Talk about that time.
Okay, 5 years is what I was in. I was in private practice for 5 years. The reason I went into private practice is because I'd had my twins and I needed the flexibility of private practice as opposed to a government job where you have to be at work at certain hours. And those 5 years I worked mostly on criminal defense, but I did get some great opportunities that I would never have had if I'd stayed here. In addition to being on the other side of the courtroom. And I think you can't minimize the value of having sat across the desk from defendants' mothers and defendants themselves and talked to them about a case. It's not something that you can replicate in a DA's office. Sometimes you have to get out there and do that before you understand what defense attorneys are going through and what defendants are going through. So I know that. But in addition to that, I also served as guardian ad litem for children in defects cases in all 5 of our other counties. And so I had that experience in the juvenile court of being the guardian for children that had been neglected and abused. And I also got to serve as a judge pro temp in juvenile court, which assistant DAs never get to do, but I've gotten to be on the bench in juvenile court when the judges were unavailable here in Muskogee County. So I got a lot of opportunities. I spent some time in, I did some wills and I worked on a little bit of corporate and I dabbled in some other things. I did a very few divorces. So I do have some experience in the civil side of things and domestic side of things. But I think that I didn't leave to get a wider variety of experience when I left the DA's office, but I did. That was a benefit of it, was I got that breadth of experience. Now as the district attorney, I understand what it's like to try to run a law firm. I wasn't a partner, so I didn't have to make payroll, but I understand what it is to make payroll, having been out there.
Is this one of those jobs you can't make everybody happy in?
That's absolutely right. I think that anytime you make a tough decision, well, first of all, I think trying to please everyone is a sign of mediocrity. You can't please everyone. I have to base my decisions on the facts as I know them to be, whatever legal implications I see, my ethical obligations, my own morals, and that's how I make a decision. And you are absolutely right that I cannot please everybody with every decision that I make. I may not even please my husband with every decision that I make, but he and others that know me appreciate the fact that I'm basing it on the right stuff, that I am making decisions that I feel are right for the community and for my office. And so even if you don't, no one's going to agree with every decision of mine, but if you understand that the way that I'm making those decisions, that's what's important.